Welcome back to another video. So in this video, we are continuing the previous lab, which is the layer 2 tech. But if you remember that in the previous lab, we have attached one default gateway over here. So in this lab, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove that default gateway and I will shift that default gateway to the Palo Alto. So I will be creating an interface, VLAN interface number 10 and VLAN interface number 20. That will be 10.1.1.254 and this will be 20.1.1.254. So instead of having a separate router over here, I'm eliminating that router and I'm having that VLANs interfaces on the Palo Alto itself. So you can say that you have a switch and multiple endpoints, and instead of having a dedicated router as a default gateway, we are now having the SVIs on the Palo Alto instead of switch. So you can get to the same scenario, the same thing we are going to achieve now. So first thing first, so what I will do is that I will get rid of these links. All right. And the next thing what I'm going to do is that go back to the Palo Alto now. So I will keep these things similarly. There are no changes on the sub interfaces. We will keep that same thing. But the only thing is that we will go to the under the interface, we will go to the VLAN interface now. In the VLAN interface, we will add a VLAN. We will say VLAN number 10. And you see that it is now asking an object, VLAN object. So if you remember, we already created a VLAN object which are doing nothing. It's just an object doing nothing because it is not been assigned to anything, and the sub interfaces are the one which we're doing actual tagging and everything. So now what we are doing is that we are just creating a layer 3 interface VLAN on top of our layer 2. So this is my router 1 connected to Palo Alto. You can say this is my router 2 and this is my router 3. So what I am doing is that this one is the layer 2 link. Okay, so whenever the switch is tagging as a VLAN number 10, so it will be coming to the first on the physical interface E1/1, and after that it will see that it is been tagged, so it will send it to E1/10 because that VLAN sub interface belong to that particular VLAN. So now once that is being done, so what we are now doing is that we are going to have a layer 3 VLAN interface on this particular Palo Alto. So instead of having on the switches, we do have the SVIs. Similarly, we on the Palo Alto, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a VLAN number 10 interface with IP address 10.1.1.254. This will be a layer 3 interface. It will have its own zone. So this zone will be a layer 3 zone, and this will be attached to the VLAN object which we created. So now before we said that E1/1.10 will be VLAN number layer 2, and it will have a VLAN object VLAN number 10, and it will have a zone that is L2 untagged. But this object was not making any sense because it was just an empty object, nothing is been assigned. So now we are going to assign the VLAN interface number 10, who is tagging VLAN number 10, who is an L3 interface, who will be having an IP address of 210.10.1.254, and it will have its own layer 3 zone. So on top of the architecture, you can say that this is the underlay one, which is the layer 2. On top of that one, we are running a layer 3 overlay, you can say. Just for the explanation, so whenever the traffic is coming in from the R1, so it will be forwarded to the sub interface 1.10, and sub interface is able to look up for the layer 3 VLAN interface because that is now been attached indirectly. So that is now being attached indirectly. How? Because VLAN number 10 interface VLAN L3 interface is being assigned to the VLAN 10 object, and that object is now being assigned to the interface itself. So indirectly that is being attached to that interface. And similarly, in the same fashion, 2/1.10 is also assigned to the same VLAN number 10. Again, that is also mapping to the same object. Interface 3/1.10 is also assigned to VLAN number 10, that is also mapping to the same object. So basically you are gathering all the interfaces and you are saying that you have been mapped to this particular interface, and if you want to communicate or do the routing, you can ping to that interface. So let's go ahead and configure. I know this is a little bit confusing, but yes. So on the interface VLAN, I will click on add now. So I will say that will be assigned to VLAN number 10. So you see that I'm not tagging anything over here because tagging is already been done on the layer sub interfaces. So now it is asking which VLAN you want to associate. I will select VLAN number 10. Virtual router, keep it default for now, don't worry. And the zone. So you see that layer 3 zone, I don't have anything. So if I go back to my topology, so what I will do is that I will create a layer 3 zones for the VLAN number 10. That should be L3 V10, and for the VLAN number 20 I will create L3 V20 zone. So I will create those names. So I will say I will create a new zone. This one should be L3 VLAN number 10. I will assign it to it. Go to the IPv4, select 10.1.1.254/24 IP address, and in the advanced management profile, when we study about the profiles, we will look into it. Currently, I will create one. There is already one ping. That means I am allowing ping on this particular interface. So configuration, VLAN ID interface name will be VLAN number 10. VLAN will be number object VLAN 10. Virtual router, keep it default. Security zone L3v10 IPv4 configuration 10.1.1.254. Now I will create one more VLAN, that should be VLAN number 20, and this should be assigned to VLAN number 20. Virtual routers will be default, and I will create a new zone that should be L3v20, and I will assign an IP address that should be 20.1.1.254/24, and click on OK. Uh, in the advanced, I need to allow the ping, otherwise we are not able to ping. Now you see that I created 10 and 20, and by default it has now Palo Alto created an untagged traffic once, which has no VLAN, no IP address, nothing, no zone attached to it. So it created by default. Now since I have created an interface VLAN and attached it to the VLAN object, so if I go back to VLAN, and here you can see that the VLAN interface has been automatically updated. And I don't need to do anything right now. I just need to go and commit because the job is already been done. So before we created a layer 2 infrastructure, so that means Palo Alto E1/1 is been attached to VLAN untag object which has no VLANs in it, and L2 untag zone. But E1/1.10 is also a layer 2, and it is also assigned to VLAN 10 object, and is also having a zone as L2 untagged. But the difference here is that now this object is being associated with the interface VLAN number 10, which is an L3 interface which has its own zone, which has its IP address, and also we assign the management profile for it, ping. And also we associated this VLAN 10 to this particular object. So this information was empty before, and now this information is being filled by associating an interface VLAN to it. Alright, so this commit is successful. So at this moment, what I am expecting is that R1 should be able to communicate with 10.1.254, and R4 and R5 should be able to communicate with that one. So if I go back to my R1 now, so if I say to ping 10.1.1.254, now just give it some time. Sometimes it will work and sometimes it doesn't work, but after 1 or 2 minutes it does work. Alright, so it's still not working. So now let's go back to the Palo Alto. Let's examine the interfaces now. Now let's see what we did right for so far. So in the Palo Alto, we will take interface E1/1 now. So 1/1 has the made that as a layer 2 interface, and we assign an untagged L2 untagged VLAN object. So we assign this VLAN object so that Palo Alto can accept the untagged traffic. So now everything is now tagging in. All right, so we are tagging VLAN 10, 10, 20 in all the interfaces. So what I will do is that I will remove this VLAN object from the main interface. So I will delete this one, go to the main interface. So this VLAN interface, I will just say none. Okay. So I'm not associating any VLAN object right now. I will do the same thing and I will do the same thing. Let's go ahead and commit. So let the commit finish. So I did nothing, it just only that I have removed the VLAN object from the main interfaces of 1/1, 1/2, and 1/3, and sub interfaces have their respective VLAN interfaces, VLAN objects, and the tagging VLAN 10 and 20. So it is a little confusing, but we just need to understand how things work. So commit is successful. Let's go back to the R1 now. Still it is not pinging. So let's inspect what is the issue. So 1/1, layer 3, L2 untag number 10. That's all should be all good. Let's go to the VLAN number 10. That is been all associated. Interface VLAN 10 is been associated. Let's go back to interface VLAN 10. And we have associated VLAN number 10, virtual router default. And this is the default gateway. We allowed the ping. Yep, everything seems to be fine. So yeah, I will keep on trying that one. I think that should come within 1 or 2 minutes.